Hello, Philosophy 102. This is Professor Nick. You probably have not seen my face before, but this is me, and I'm glad that you are joining me this semester for critical thinking. I hope so far you have been enjoying the class and that you have been getting some fruitful knowledge and information on how to be a more effective thinker, a more critical thinker, and I hope that you're applying these tools to not just what you're doing in this class and in college, but your everyday life. The stuff that we are doing this semester is applicable to almost everything that we do, and I hope that it has been a really rewarding experience for you so far. I just wanted to share this short tutorial with you, particularly on the material from chapter 3 on how to diagram an argument. Um, you all have been doing pretty well so far in terms of identifying statements such as conclusions and premises. And up until this point, you have been introduced and become aware of argumentative statements, but they have been short so far. But in chapter 3, you've been introduced to longer arguments, and particular exercise that you were introduced to in chapter 3 was how to diagram an argument. Um, that can get a little tricky, and I know probably as you were reading, you got a little lost in how to do it. Some of you already turned in the homework and took a good college try at it. But I just wanted to share this short tutorial to give you a little bit more clarity on how to diagram an argument. With long passages, even though they sometimes may look a little daunting, can be very wordy and verbose and have a lot of things going on with them. If you take your time and read them, dissect them, you can get the meat out of them and really break down the argument and what an author is trying to say in the passage. And diagramming an argument will help you get practice in how to more effectively really get a sense of what a writer is trying to convey, what the writer is trying to argue, and really make you more effective in quickly and more readily identifying that argument. And in chapter 3, diagramming arguments, you really get the practice of how to distinguish between statements and non-statements. What's the author's conclusion and what are the premises? And I hope these terms you are familiar with because they have been in the preceding chapters. And so the work that we're going to be doing in terms of diagramming arguments is really um, the work in you trying to decipher and tease out what the conclusion and the premises um, of a passage is or what they are, and visualizing the logical connection between a passages or an essay's conclusion and its premises. So when it comes to diagramming arguments, particularly for these longer passages, there are steps, and there's a handy guide on page 89 of your textbook that will help you um, to um, uh, to process the steps for diagramming arguments. Remember that in any essay or article or passage that you read that is trying to convey a thesis or a claim, there are going to be particular types of sentences and statements in them. Your argumentative statements and your non-argumentative statements. Or sentences. So your statements, right, the ones that say something is or isn't so, and ones that aren't. You'll have sentences that are making arguments, right, your premises and your conclusion, and statements that aren't making an argument. And it's important to be able to recognize those different types of sentences. And so in diagramming an argument, your first step is to Underline all premise or conclusion indicator words such as since, therefore, and because. And then number the statement. So remember, a premise is a statement that is used to support another statement. A conclusion is a statement that other sentences or statements are supporting. Uh, so, um, so the distinction between those sentences or statements is a premise will support another sentence, and a conclusion will be supported by other statements or sentences. Um, there are indicator words, right? So indicator words are sentences that will clue you in as to what types of sentence or statement it might be. And so those indicator words for your premises might be because or since, um, such as, or the like. So state words that will go on to explain something or to support a particular position. So because or since, you know, as much as, those are some common indicator words for premise statements. Common conclusion indicator words are therefore, thus, and conclusion. So when you see those indicator words, you will be clued in as to those being conclusion indicator words. So in a passage that is longer, identify those premise and conclusion statements marked off by those indicator words and underline them and number those statements. All right. So if you have right a passage of 8 sentences, and 4 of them are argumentative statements. So right, your premise and conclusions, or your premises and conclusion, number those statements 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember, sometimes right the conclusion may come at the beginning and the premises follow, or the premises may come before and the conclusion will be at the end, or regardless of where those statements are, just number them, right? So if because such and such and such and such, and since such and such and such and such, therefore, blah 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 blah. You'll number those sentences, right? 1, 2, 3, right? With sentence 1 and sentence 2 being your premise statement, and sentence 3 being your conclusion. All right. So identify those statements and those indicator words, and then number them. Second, you want to find the conclusion. All right. So the conclusion, again, oftentimes, many times, will be marked off by the indicator word for a conclusion, but not always. Remember, you don't necessarily have to have an indicator word. It's just that many times writers will use indicator words to clue you in that they're giving you their conclusion. Um, but in any reading that you do, you want to identify the conclusion of a statement or of a passage first. So identify the conclusion and then draw a wavy line under it. Next, you want to locate the premises and then underline those premises. So again, right, if you have within the passage your 3 sentences, right, sentences 1 and 2 are your premises, sentence 3 is your conclusion, right? Draw a wavy line under sentence 3, your conclusion, and then sentences 1 and 2, underline those statements. Step 4, you want to cross out all extraneous material, redundancies, irrelevant sentences, questions, exclamations, right? So all of those non-statements, or if a passage begins with a question, that that's not an argumentative statement, so you cross that out. If it's a redundancy, cross that out. If it's an exclamation, right, trying to emphasize something but not really arguing something, cross that out, because those sentences aren't relevant to the diagramming of an argument. So cross them out. And then step 5, you want to diagram the argument, connecting premises and conclusions with arrows showing their logical connections. Include both dependent and independent premises. The distinction between independent and dependent premises is independent premises can stand on their own in how they support an argument. Dependent premises don't, right? So it needs another premise to make it supportive for the conclusion. And I'll show you in a minute how you would diagram the two different types of premises, because there's a different way you diagram an independent premise from a dependent premise. But it's important to know that an independent premise is one in which it doesn't need another premise to be supportive of the conclusion. It can stand by itself in supporting the conclusion or supporting another statement. A dependent premise, it will need another sentence or another statement in order for it to effectively and convincingly support the conclusion. So let's look at a couple of examples from the homework. So on 3.9, you have some of your exercises. I'm just going to do a couple of them, one that has independent premises and one that has dependent premises to get you started, and then you can do the work from there. But if you go to exercise 3.9 on page 92, you have an exercise where you need to diagram arguments. And so I'll just start with number 1. 1, I shouldn't take physics this semester. My course load is already too heavy. There's no room for the course in my schedule, and I don't like physics. All right. So what you want to do, right, is look for any indicator words. Unfortunately, this particular passage doesn't have any indicator words, but you can pretty easily decipher which sentences are your conclusion and premise statement. In this particular one, the conclusion actually comes at the beginning, right? So sentence 1 or statement 1 is, I shouldn't take physics. Right? So that's statement 1. Statement 2, my course load is heavy. Statement or sentence 3, no room in my schedule. And then sentence 4, statement 4, I don't like physics. So here you have 4 statements. The first one being your conclusion, I shouldn't take physics this semester, followed by 3 statements that are your premises, right? So this one is making an argument, and they all are making an argument, but as you can see, sentences 2, 3, and 4 are giving you reasons why, are supporting why this particular student should not take physics. So sentence 1 is your conclusion, and you have premise 1, premise 2, premise 3. But in your diagramming, right, you have statement 1, sentence 1, sentence 2, sentence 3, sentence 4, statement 4. And how would you diagram it? Well, the way you would diagram it is you will place your conclusion statement, or the number that represents your conclusion statement, at the bottom. And because these premises are independent premises, you will diagram them as so. 2, 3, 4. And then you will draw 3 arrows. One pointing from 2 to 1, one pointing from 3 to 1, and one pointing from 4 to 1. This is how you would diagram an argument wherein your premises are independent premises. But the key is your conclusion, the number sentence for your conclusion goes at the bottom, and your premise statements, your independent premises, right, they go above, and you draw arrows connecting your premises to the conclusion. All right. Again, right? Not all of your premises will be independent premises, and so what will um, a diagram look like for an argument that has dependent premises? Let's go to number 3. So well, Congressman Pork Barrel is either dishonest or incompetent. He's not incompetent though because he's expert at getting self-serving legislation through Congress. I guess he's just dishonest. All right. So, first thing you want to do is identify your premise and your conclusion statements marked off by indicator words. Again, there are no indicator words in this particular passage. But, right, we can pretty easily see which statements are your premises and your conclusions, right? So the first statement is either, or Congressman Pork Barrel is either dishonest or incompetent. He's not incompetent though, because he's expert at getting self-serving legislation through Congress. I guess he's just dishonest. So in this particular instance, because you don't have any indicator words, go first to try to find what your conclusion statement is. Your conclusion statement is actually sentence 3. It comes at the end. So I guess he's just dishonest. Now, the first statement and the second statement are your premises. But what's key is you need statement 2 in order for sentence 1 to make sense, right? So either, right, the congressman is dishonest or incompetent, right? We already know, but the second statement though tells you that he's not incompetent because he's an expert, right? So not incompetent. So you have sentence 1 that makes the statement, right? Either the congressman is dishonest or incompetent. But then you have this next statement, right? That's connected, that's related to this first statement, that's giving you more information about, right, the congressman, because he's not incompetent, because we already know that he's an expert at passing legislation. So statements 1 and 2, or sentences 1 and 2, are dependent premises. All right. So they need each other in order for us to get to our conclusion that, right, the congressman is dishonest. Right? Because we already ruled out based on our premises that he's incompetent. So how would you draw the diagram for this particular argument? Well, right, you put your conclusion at the bottom, which in this case happens to be sentence 3. Right? Above, right, you will have statements 1 and 2, but you will draw them or write them as such. 1 plus 2, put a line under 1 plus 2, and draw your arrow connecting, right, sentences or statements 1 and 2 to 3. Now, the argument will get a little trickier because you may have an argument that has your conclusion and 4 premises where sentences or statements 1 and 2 may be dependent, but sentences 3 and 4 might be independent. So you just need to really, read closely to see whether or not your premises are dependent or independent. Good luck in doing the homework. I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions, of course, please reach out to me and I'll be happy to help you. Take care. Bye.